Happy holidays from all of us here at Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS. Well, as the year draws to a close, I wanted to take a moment just to say thank you. Thank you to all of you for your support and for your interest, for listening and for viewing, for downloading. I've always given you the instructions before every podcast, for downloading, for sharing, for subscribing, and for all those comments. It is so hard to me to believe that we are almost 80 episodes and short videos in since we began a year ago. And I am happy to once again say that less than a year in, we were nominated for a regional Emmy. We are all so proud of that. Each conversation that we had here at Listen was chosen to do exactly what one listener and viewer wrote, to give the community a voice and provide what another viewer described as excellent information. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So I wanted to take a look back at some of the conversations that we had that stood out for me. My sit down with Ronnie Amin and Siraj Watt, two of the men behind Black Men Build, was so inspiring because I believe we do not see enough of the Black men who are actually trying to help other Black men heal and grow. So let's take a look back at what Ronnie had to say.
In order for us to be the men that we need for our communities and our families, we have to do some deep introspection. We have to set the programs for that. That's one of the reasons why we have our men's circles, because we have very little spaces that we can be vulnerable and talk about some of our issues, and grow from those and be in community. So we foster that there, but also we have to develop a shared analysis about what's happening. So that's why we have our programs that are based in political education. We have our Theory Thursdays and our mass calls, and we have some local things. We have our wartime roundtables where we talk about local politics. So we understand that in so many areas we need to grow so we can meet the challenge. And that is the purpose of Black Men Build.
One of the core principles of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel is to explore history, even as some try to change what is taught and how it is taught. So my conversation with Kara Anthony from KFF Health News about her documentary and podcast called Silence in Sikeston was especially meaningful because it covered a little-known chapter in Missouri of a Black man who was kidnapped from jail, who was then burned alive and dragged through the streets of Sikeston through the black side of town. Let's take a look back at what Kara Anthony had to say about this incredible moment in history in the state of Missouri.
The Department of Justice had not fully investigated any of them.
Lynchings clearly violated state law. These were murders, the worst forms of murders.
In the park, the yelling mob of 10,000 fights toward the...
But the states weren't prosecuting. And lynching was never a federal crime.
So another part in your podcast related to that clip is the DOJ investigation. They come to Sikeston. They do interviews.
And no one saw anything.
Right.
And that's the issue, right? And no one saw anything on both sides, right? So there were some Black people that said they didn't see anything out of fear for their own lives, out of fear of retaliation. If I speak out about this, the same could happen to my family member or worse. And then there's also white silence, that was a huge issue because it's like, well, why would we say anything? This is a good town. People wanted Sikeston to be perceived as an all-American city, where your dreams could come true or what have you. And, people really looked the other way. And so when it came time for that day in court for the people that were a part of the mob to really be held accountable, nothing happened. And it's, we still see the effects and the remnants of that today.
Mm-hmm. And then there was the podcast with Vincent Fluellen. It was called Black, Gay, and Proud. It was described by a viewer as a much-needed conversation. And it even touched someone in South Africa who wrote that he has now become a subscriber. Welcome in, South Africa. Let's take a look back to Vincent as he describes, in what was a humorous way, his coming out story to his mother.
didn't come out.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I didn't come out even to my mom until I was probably about 26 years old, 25 years old, right? And I remember doing it at nighttime as she was in her bed. And the lights were, she was maybe had the television on, but it was fairly dark, right?
Now, wait a minute. So you thought about it all day.
Nervous.
You probably thought about it for weeks. I'm going to tell her.
Yes.
And did you think I'm going to do it over pancakes? Or maybe I'll do it over tuna sandwiches?
Maybe I'll write it in a note. Maybe I'll write, yeah.
And it just in that moment, you walked in the house this is it.
This is it. And told her. And
what did you say? Do you remember?
I just ran it out real quickly.
Yeah.
Just blurted,
Yeah.
Mom, something I need to tell you. I'm gay. And she was like, baby, I love you.
Oh.
I love you. At that time, this is also at a time in which, being gay was also, in being gay, there was also the concern of HIV and AIDS, right? We certainly view that differently today as well. But then we were not there, right? And so that was a big concern of hers and one of which she expressed. And, just asked me to always be safe, know? And that was that. And then I went out. I went out afterwards
to some great spot
bar somewhere.
Because you still know a great spot.
Yeah.
That podcast touched thousands and thousands of lives around the world, in part because it was shared by so many people. So we want you to stay tuned to Season 2 coming January 9th, because as we prepare for our next season, we want to continue to touch lives. We are going to bring you the visionaries, the overcomers, and those providing clarity and a bold way forward for the St. Louis region. Here's one thing we know at Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. There is power in identifying and understanding the challenges and the roadblocks that we face. I believe that's the way to help the Black and Brown community not just survive, but thrive. So join us for Season 2 as we tell the stories that illuminate the path forward. Now, I truly hope you have a peaceful and wonderful holiday season. But I know that there are those of you who are grieving, and there are those of you who feel alone. That's one of the core principles here at 9 PBS and Listen St. Louis, and that is to focus on our mental health. A good friend and minister suggested to me that if you are in a place where you're grieving, you feel alone, you are sad or depressed, you're frustrated, to try serving, to try volunteering as a way to fill you up. We do happen to have all types of resources at 9 PBS because mental well-being is a core principle here. So if you are in need, if you are feeling alone, we want you to go to 9pbs.org/mental well-being to find resources that you need to help you get through not just the holiday season, but to help you to have and live a fulfilling life. I truly hope that you have a wonderful holiday season, whether it's just you and 40 or 50 of your closest friends and family. However you're celebrating, please come back and join us for Season 2 of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel coming on January 9th. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in, for subscribing, for downloading, for sharing, and for all of those comments. Thank you so much, and happy holidays from Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS.